Well, we are continuing our series looking at the questions that God and Jesus ask in the Bible. And remember that God never asks a question for his own benefit. If God asks, "Where are you?" it's not because he can't see where you are. God asks questions to get at something within our souls. Last week we heard Jesus ask, "Who touched me?" And just as Jesus restored and refreshed the woman in that text who had been bleeding for 12 years, and he also restored and refreshed the religious leader in that text, so too we need to be refreshed spiritually. Hopefully you gave the 7-day refresh devotional a try this past week. If not, it is still available for download on our website. This week we are rewinding the clock a bit to what Jesus did and what Jesus asked on Maundy Thursday before his betrayal and crucifixion. I saw a comic once that said, "Sometimes when people leave, I am seized by a sudden fear that they'll die when I'm out, and I'll never forget the last thing I said to them." And then it shows the guy saying, "Hey, while you're out, can you pick up some spray cleaner that works on cat vomit? Oh, and also, you're in my heart always." Jesus wanted his disciples to remember the last act before his crucifixion. Jesus wanted his disciples to remember this, to imitate it, to embody it. Jesus knew that this and communion were the very last things they would see from him before he was hanging on a cross. So let us see what Jesus does, knowing that this was the last thing they would see from him before his crucifixion. And let us also ponder the question that Jesus asks. John chapter 13. Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. During the supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who is bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean, and you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, he put on his robe and had returned to the table, and he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set to you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." This is the word of the Lord, so thanks be to God. Well, it was one of the most memorable conversations I ever had in ministry. That is saying quite a bit. This conversation has shaped my entire approach to ministry for over a decade, and it shows no signs of slowing down. Lo, those many years ago, I was in charge of a children's ministry, and let me tell you, we had a hoppin' children's ministry. It was one of the main engines of growth for the entire church. Children would make their parents get out of bed to take them to church for this children's ministry. And it was also a blast to lead. That was one of the most fun eras of my ministry life. Part of that was because we got to see so many children getting to know Jesus and wanting to come back next week. But another part of the fun was seeing so many adult volunteers discovering their talent and their passion and using it for Christ. So about that transformative conversation, one of those adult volunteers came to me one day with a theological quandary for me. He said to me, "I feel like I'm doing something wrong." "Well, what do you mean? I mean, the kids in your group love you. You seem to have fun every time I'm checking in on your group. What's wrong?" "Well, that's the problem. I'm having too much fun, and I'm feeling guilty about it. I feel like Jesus wants us to be sacrificing, but instead I'm having fun. What am I doing wrong?" Now, I have had variations of that conversation many times over the last decade or so. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever thought that you had to be sacrificing to be truly following Jesus, to be truly loving the way Jesus loved? It should feel like a sacrifice, right? Because Jesus sacrificed. Aren't we supposed to as well? Well, sometimes, plenty of times, I have been asked to serve in ways that annoyed the bejeebers out of me because I was certain that Jesus wanted me to do it. But other times, I have felt the same thing that Rob West felt. Rob was making props for movies in Hollywood when the coronavirus shut down all of the films he was working on. With his background in fabrication, he started making face shields for hospitals, including some in Denver. And as the need became greater, as his production increased, he suddenly found himself leading a volunteer organization that was pumping out thousands of face shields. In an interview, he said, "I feel like this is one of the most productive things I have ever done." So many people would think making cool props for Hollywood would be like the apex of your career, right? You could tell stories about that for your entire life. But it's this volunteer effort to help hospitals that is the apex in his mind. Why? Because we are made in the image of a God who went above and beyond to serve us, who went above and beyond to love us. When we go above and beyond for someone else, it kindles the image of God within us. That's when we feel most alive. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it requires sacrifice, like Jesus. Other times, we don't even realize what we're sacrificing because we're too busy feeling like this is what we were made to do. This is who we were made to be. Earl Palmer wrote in one of his books a story about a pre-med undergrad who became a Christian after a long journey of doubts and questions. A particularly nasty flu had kept him out of his classes for 10 days, 10 critical days in organic chemistry, which is not easy. But one of his classmates, a Christian, collected every assignment, took notes on every lecture, took time out of his own studies to make sure that this other student was able to catch up. Now, this pre-med undergrad told Earl Palmer, "You know that this just isn't done, and I probably wouldn't have done it. But he gave that help to me without any fanfare, without any complaints. I wanted to know what made this friend of mine act the way he did, and I found myself asking him if I could go to church with him." Later, he gave what Palmer said is the greatest tribute he had ever heard to a Christian. "I felt more alive when I was around that friend." Let me repeat that last part. I felt more alive when I was around that friend. And did you hear what the student said? I found myself asking him if I could go to church with him. He did that not because he felt guilty, not because he was impressed by just the sacrifice of his friend, although that was notable. Mainly, he was attracted to it because he saw and experienced life, not death. He felt more alive. Jesus told his followers in John chapter 10, "I came that they may have and may have and enjoy life and have it in abundance to the full until it overflows. But Jesus showed his disciples in our text today that the way to have and enjoy life, the way to have an abundant, full, overflowing life is to serve others above and beyond their expectations. Now remember, there weren't sidewalks at this time, right? And remember, sewers didn't really exist at this time. Do you know where the sewer was in most cities at the time? The street. People would dump their waste in the common street. The nicer cities had channels for it to run into a nearby river or lake, but not all cities were so nice. So the ground wasn't exactly sanitary, right? And have you ever seen what someone's feet look like if they've gone hiking in hiking sandals? There's actually a competition from one of the sandal makers where they ask people to send in pictures of their feet after their hikes. And this contest exists not because your feet look pretty after this, capiche? So when Jesus washed the sandaled feet of people who walked around in cities where the sewers were literally the ground beneath them, do you think that was pleasant? I don't think this was one of those I'm having too much fun serving moments. But that's why Jesus asked them, do you know what I have done to you? Notice he didn't ask, do you know what I've done for you? He said, what I have done to you. Jesus did something to them. Jesus did something to us. What did Jesus do to us? Not just for us, but to us in this foot washing. Well, Jesus told them the answer to that question. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. In other words, if we want abundant, overflowing, full life, we have to be willing to serve people in ways that may seem beneath us. Jesus went to the extreme here. How many things are lower in your wish list than washing people's sandaled feet after they've walked around in sewage? I can think of a few things lower than that on my list, but not that many. And the Son of God did it willingly. Not only did Jesus wash their sandaled sewage feet, guess who hadn't left the room yet? Judas was still there. Jesus washed Judas's feet. Jesus washed the sandaled, sewage-covered foot of the man who was about to betray him that very night. Oh boy. I sometimes say that one of my leadership styles is to take away people's excuses. I put in extra work to make sure there aren't easy cop-outs. But man, Jesus washing Judas's feet, that's like the ultimate excuse takeaway right there. If he was willing to do that, how can I tell God I'm too good to do anything? I don't think Jesus left us any cop-outs after that. If Jesus has been tapping you on the shoulder, now you know. You don't have any excuses. You don't have any cop-outs. Unless you think you're better than Jesus, you don't have any wiggle room on that. But, this is a pretty big but if you do what Jesus is asking you to do, you are more likely to feel alive than you've ever felt before. In our text today, we see Jesus telling us the bad news, the thing he did to us. If I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. But this astonishing service results in what Jesus said in John 10 that we heard, I came that they may have and enjoy life and have it in abundance, the full, until it overflows. Your willingness to become as low as you need to serve someone above and beyond their expectations, that willingness will make you feel taller than the Denver skyline. We were talking in our staff meeting this past week about how to define a win, during this strange season of ministry. What do we hope happens? What do we hope to see? We were sharing stories of moments that made us, and hopefully Jesus, smile. And many of those stories from this last week were focused around the delivery of the communion elements to those who were struggling to connect with our church and with our online worship right now. We've heard from many of those who drove around to deliver the elements that they appreciated the connection, even from 6 feet away. They were grateful for the opportunity to serve. We've heard from many of the recipients of those communion elements that they appreciated the thoughtfulness behind it. One of them said, "I can't believe you did this for me." So we have the ones who were serving saying, "I'm so grateful I could do it." We have the ones who were blessed saying, "I can't believe you did this for me." That, sisters and brothers, is a glimpse of the kingdom of Christ. That is a little slice of heaven on earth. That is finding life abundant by washing someone's feet. That's what we're all about. In fact, I think that is a great summary of what we hope to see during this season. My win for this season of ministry is defined by how many times we can hear, "I can't believe you did this for me," and "I'm so grateful I got to serve like that." We've seen quite a bit of both of these. I mean, I'm kind of weird, newsflash, right? Kind of weird, in that it's actually kind of hard to make me feel proud. I just kind of expect things to be done well. If I do something well, that's just expectations. If our church does something well, that's just what I expect. And I only tell you this so that you know that what I'm about to say has far deeper meaning than if it were coming from someone else. I have been proud of how our church has responded to this sudden shift in our church's ministry. I'm proud of Kate, our children's director, sending personalized letters to the kids, sending drawings that they'll enjoy. Proud of her for offering to do Zoom meetings with the kids. That's not expected. It's above and beyond. I'm proud of how many of you have rolled with the changes and embraced this new season. We've had about twice as many people connect with our online worship and devotions and prayers and communion meetings as I had expected. As Eleanor and Carol called people ahead of the communion element drop-off, they found a bunch of people who we didn't expect were connecting, had actually maybe had a family member help them or others who helped them get connected. In response to this disruption, you could be sitting at home griping about how church right now just isn't real church. I'm sure some of that's happening. But I am proud of how many of you are making lemonade out of lemons during this time. It speaks well of your character and of your faith, and it makes me feel proud to be your leader. I'm proud of Karen and her family for dropping off packages to the families in her choirs. Since she leads the bell choirs, she called them ding-dong drop-offs. That's not expected. It's above and beyond. I'm proud of our Shabby Sheep Women's Ministry, delivering baked goods and putting pinwheels in people's yards. It's not expected. It's above and beyond. I am proud of our deacons for reaching out to help 2 people from our community who worked very close to our church, who were laid off during this disruption. The gifts that they are giving to those people during this time are unexpected. It's above and beyond. I'm proud of Carol for organizing and the people in our church who responded to do these weekly phone calls to those who might be especially lonely, especially disconnected during this time. We've heard how it has blessed the callers and the recipients. A great example of, "I'm so grateful I was able to do that, and I can't believe you did this for me." It's not expected. It's above and beyond. I'm proud of the many sewers in our church who are making face masks out of their personal stashes and giving them away to neighbors, friends, and hospitals. It would be interesting at the end of this to get like the final total of face masks produced from our church through this way, because I think it would be a surprisingly large number. I'm proud that we're offering the burner phones for people who are experiencing homelessness right now in our community. I'm proud of our multi-year partnership with Graceful Cafe so that those phones can be distributed with grace and care. It's not expected. It's above and beyond. I actually got a thank you note from one of the recipients of the first batch of phones. That was above and beyond on his part. I know there are a lot more stories of people saying, "I'm so glad I got to do that, and I can't believe you did that for me." The more we hear both of those phrases, the better we have handled this season. How might Jesus be calling you to serve in an unexpected, above and beyond way? If he is calling you to serve in some unexpected way, I bet you'll be glad you did it. Because he takes our unexpected, no excuses, no cop-out service. And in return, he gives us life to the full, life abundant, life overflowing. I pray that we continue to hear, I'm so glad I got to do that. And I pray that we continue to hear, I can't believe you did that for me. Both of those are a little slice of heaven on earth. I'm proud of how much we have heard both of those so far. I pray we continue to serve in that way. I pray that we continue to serve as Jesus served, with no excuses, with no cop-outs. Amen.